It was a stormy night. I found a soaking wet little white ball of fluff in a cardboard box. She had amber cat-like eyes and a soft tail, and mumbled timidly, "I'm not stealing anything." 3 years later, that Catgirl is now lying on my chest waking me up. Her tail coiled tight around my wrist, refusing to let go. I first met Sumian in an alley on a rainy day. I'd just finished working overtime. The ribs of my umbrella had flipped inside out from the wind like an upside-down flower. The hems of my pants were soaked and clinging to my legs as I hurried home, hugging my laptop bag to my chest. Then I heard a faint rustle coming from a cardboard box around the corner. I crouched down and saw a huddled little white ball, soaking wet. It was a cat. Or rather a girl who looked like a cat. She was curled up as far back in the box as she could get, long white hair stuck to her face in damp strands. The fur on the tips of her ears dripped with rain, and the tip of her tail drooped limply. When I leaned closer, her half-closed eyes flew wide open, bearing tiny sharp fangs, just like a kitten who'd had its tail stepped on. Don't come near me." Her voice trembled even as she curled herself into an even smaller ball. I'm not stealing anything. I held the umbrella out over her before I even thought about it. Rain hammered against the ribs of the umbrella and splashed on the ground between us, sending up tiny droplets. She looked up at me. Her pupils narrowed into thin vertical slits through the curtain of rain, like two pieces of wet amber. I found out later that's when catgirls are at their most vulnerable. Rain weakens their magic and forces them back into their true form. Do you want to come home with me?" I heard myself say. "I have a hairdryer. And warm milk." The tip of her tail twitched softly. Looking back now, that was probably the best decision I ever made. I yawned. "Time to get up, Tilda." Something soft and fuzzy nuzzled at the tip of my nose. I blinked awake blearily, and there was Sumian leaning over the bed. Her long white hair spread across the pale blue sheets, like moonlight fallen on snow. Her cat ears perked straight up, her tail swishing slow little circles behind her. Her paw-pad fingertips poked gently at my cheek. 5 more minutes. I rolled over, burying my face in the pillow. The next second, something soft and warm coiled itself around my waist. I looked down and saw Sumian's tail snaking out from under the covers, like a nimble little white snake, looping around my waist again and again, then tugging me gently toward her. "Nope, can't, Tilda." She leaned in close to my ear, her breath minty fresh from brushing her teeth. "We have to go to the supermarket for salmon today. They'll sell out if we wait." I admitted defeat and opened my eyes, reaching up to rub her ear. She immediately half-closed her eyes, a low rumbling purr rising in her throat. That's how catgirls show they're happy. Her tail loosened a little, but still stayed, looped around my waist, like she was scared I'd run away. "All right, I'm up." I pinched her earlobe. "But you have to let go of my waist first. Otherwise I can't get up." "No." She tilted her head, the tip of her ear brushing the back of my hand. "You worked till 10 last night. I'm making sure you eat breakfast today." She tugged me up into a sitting position. I looked at her in the Hello Kitty pajamas I'd bought her, the tip of her tail all fluffed up from sleeping on it, and suddenly thought this kind of morning was better than any alarm clock. Sumian made breakfast. She was wearing the strawberry apron I'd given her, bustling around the kitchen. I leaned in the doorway watching her. She stood on tiptoe to reach the plates on the top shelf, her tail flicking back and forth behind her to keep her balance, just like a cat stretching for something high up. "Ayan, can you pass me the milk?" She turned around, a little dusting of flour in her hair. "Third shelf of the fridge, the carton at the very back." I walked over and deliberately looped my arms around her waist from behind. Her ears shot straight up instantly, and her tail poofed out into a fluffy dandelion ball with a soft whoosh. "Ayan." Her ear tips flushed pink. "Stop it, the eggs are gonna burn." I laughed and let go, handing her the milk. When she took it, her fingertip brushed lightly against my pinky, quick and sneaky, like a kitten stealing a treat, then darting back. Fried eggs, toast, warm milk, and the sugar-cured salmon she'd specifically bought. I'd protested that raw fish for. Breakfast wasn't healthy, but she'd held up her phone showing an article and said, Catgirls need lots of protein. Humans can eat it too, Ion. Try it. I took a bite of salmon. The cool, smooth texture melted on my tongue. She sat across from me, chin in her hands, the tip of her tail tapping against the chair leg over and over, like a student waiting for the teacher's grade. Good? Good. I nodded. But next time let's have something cooked for breakfast. Okay? Her ears drooped, and her tail went limp. But you said the supermarket salmon was really fresh last time, ... I reached over and ruffled the top of her head, and her ears perked right back up again. We can have it on weekends. I compromised. On weekdays let's have warm food for breakfast. Otherwise I'll worry about your stomach. Her eyes lit up, and her tail thumped happily against the tablecloth. Pinky. Promise. Our pinkies hooked together. Her fingers were a little cooler than mine, the pads of her fingertips soft and plush, just like a little cat's paw pads. When we left, Soo-mi insisted on walking me to the subway station. She was wearing a white knit sweater and light blue jeans, her long hair tied back in a low ponytail with the hair tie I'd given her. Her tail was hidden under her loose coat, even though catgirls were fully accepted in human society now. She still got shy about it. Ion, don't forget your phone. She straightened my collar for me. It's gonna rain this afternoon. Remember your umbrella. I know. I squeezed her hand. Are you going to the library this afternoon? She nodded. I borrowed this book called Human City Survival Guide. The chapter 1 was reading last time said couples should do crafts together to get closer. Her ear tips went pink. She kicked at a pebble on the ground with her toe, voice soft. Ion, do you want to do pottery this weekend? Sure. I smiled and agreed. What do you want to make? She tilted her head, the hair tie slipping a little. Let's make mugs, with our names carved on them. We reached the subway station. As I was about to head through the gates, she suddenly tugged at the hem of my coat. Ion? She looked up at me, her pupils round and amber now that the light was dimmer. Come home early tonight. Okay. I crouched down and kissed her forehead. I'll bring you candied chestnuts on the way home. Her eyes immediately curved into little crescent moons. Her tail wriggled under her coat, puffing the fabric out into a little bump. Then I'll wait for you. It did rain that afternoon. I looked out the office window. Rain streaked down the glass like loose strands of beads. My phone lit up with a message from Sue. Ion, it's raining. Did you bring your umbrella? Got it, don't worry. I typed back. Are you still at the library? Just finished my book. She sent a photo of the library window, raindrops running down the glass in long trails. Ion, I bought ginger tea. I'll warm it up for you later. I stared at the ends of her hair peeking into the edge of the photo, and suddenly wanted nothing more than to go home right then. The rain had lightened up by the time I got off work. I walked to the station with my umbrella up, past the candied chestnut stand, and remembered my promise from that morning. I bought a bag, warm and fragrant. Almost home, I spotted a white figure standing by the entrance to our building. Soo-mi was holding her umbrella, a few strands of hair blown loose by the wind, standing on tiptoe and peering down the street. Soo-mi? I called out to her. She turned around and her eyes lit up instantly. She ran over, her tail slipping out from under her coat, swirling through the rain like a little white cloud. Ion? She threw herself into my arms, cool from the rain. I've been waiting forever. Thought you were waiting at the library. I ruffled the top of her hair. Sure enough, it was a little damp. You'll catch a cold out in the rain, but... She looked up, raindrops clinging to her eyelashes. I wanted to see you sooner. My heart softened. I tucked the bag of chestnuts into her hands. Here. Candied chestnuts. Still warm. Her eyes curved into little crescents again. She peeled one and held it up to my mouth. Sweet, warm flavor bloomed on my tongue. She peeled one for herself too, then yelped and jerked her hand back from the heat, her tail poofing all the way out. Silly. I laughed and took her hand, blowing on the chestnut before feeding it to her. Blow on it next time, dummy. She nodded around the chestnut in her mouth, her tail curling softly around my wrist like a warm little scarf. That night we curled up on the couch watching a movie. Sumian was tucked in my arms, her tail draped over my leg, peeling the tangerine I'd bought. Ayan tangerine. She held up a segment, still warm from her fingers. It's sweet. I bit into it. Sweet. Tart juice burst across my tongue. She hummed, satisfied, and started peeling the next one. Halfway through the movie she suddenly looked up. Ayan, I read something at the library today. It said, human couples exchange tokens of affection. Her ear tips flushed pink. Do you think we should exchange something too? I thought about the pottery mug she'd mentioned last time. But before I could speak, she pulled a little box out of her pocket. I made it. She opened the box. Inside was a silver chain with a tiny cat paw charm. I shaped it with my magic. It won't tarnish. I picked up the chain. The little cat paw charm felt warm, just like her body temperature. Will you put it on me? She turned around, brushing her hair over one shoulder. The silver chain settled at the base of her neck, the tiny cat paw charm resting right above her collarbone. I leaned down and kissed the charm. Her tail immediately coiled around my waist, tugging me closer. Where's your token, Ayan? She nuzzled my chin, her voice soft as cotton. I pulled a photo out of my wallet, a Polaroid from our last trip to the amusement park. It was Sumian and me on the carousel. She was grinning and holding up a peace sign, her tail swirling into a little blur behind her. This. I pressed the photo into her palm. You keep it. She stared at the photo for a long time, then buried her face in the crook of my neck. Her tail looped around my arm again and again, like she was scared I'd disappear. Ayan, you won't leave me, right? Never. I stroked her ear. I'm gonna spend forever with you, Sumian. A low purr rumbled in her throat, and the tip of her tail brushed softly across the back of my hand. Pinky promise. Pinky. Promise. The pottery class that weekend was busier than I'd expected. Sumian was wearing the blue and white striped apron I'd bought her, fingertips smudged with clay, frowning down at the mug she was shaping. Ayan, it's lopsided. She pushed the mug toward me. Help me. Never. I stroked her ear. I'm gonna spend forever with you, Sumian. A low purr rumbled in her throat, and the tip of her tail brushed softly across the back of my hand. Pinky promise. Pinky. Promise. The pottery class that weekend was busier than I'd expected. Sumian was wearing the blue and white striped apron I'd bought her, fingertips smudged with clay, frowning down at the mug she was shaping. Ayan, it's lopsided. She pushed the mug toward me. Help me. I took her hands in mine and guided her as we kneaded the clay together. Her fingers were soft, and the clay on them felt like warm, soft cloud. Take it slow, I murmured right by her ear. Shape it first. Her ear tips flushed bright red instantly. Her tail wriggled under her apron, puffing the fabric out into a little bump. Ayan, don't stand so close, she whispered. I'll get distracted. I laughed and stepped back a little. She focused on pinching the mug into shape, but the tip of her tail curled accurately around my pinky, just like a little kid clinging to an adult's hand when they're first learning to walk. Our mugs ended up a little crooked, covered in both our fingerprints, with Ayan and Sumian carved into the bottom. Sumian held it up and turned it over and over, her tail swishing like a tiny fan. Better than I thought. She looked up and smiled at me, a smudge of clay on the tip of her nose. We'll drink out of these from now on, okay? I brushed the clay off her nose with my thumb. I'll make you milk in it every morning. Days drifted by like warm honey water, sweet, slow, and seeping into every corner of your heart with warmth. When I worked overtime, Sumian would cook warm congee and bring it to my office in an insulated jar. When I had a cold, she'd kneel by the bed and wrap her tail around me to keep my hands warm. When I watched soccer games, she'd curl up beside me knitting a scarf. The stitches were messy and uneven, but it was warmer than any cashmere when I put it on. Her possessiveness hid in all the tiny little things. If I talked too long with a female coworker, she'd tap the back of my hand gently with her tail, then look up at me with wet eyes and say, Ayan, it's time to go home, Tilda. If I helped the elderly neighbor lady carry her groceries, she'd wait by the stairwell, the tip of her tail tapping against the wall over and over. Then when I got close, she'd throw her arms around me and mumble, "Ayan can only hug me." But she was never unreasonable. After I explained things, she'd tilt her head and smile, her tail brushing my palm. When I praised her for being good, she'd half close her eyes, bury her face in my neck, and say as long as Ayan's happy. This winter was especially cold. Sumian curled up on the couch knitting a sweater, her tail wrapped around my leg like a fuzzy scarf. "Ayan, hold out your hand," she said suddenly. I held out my hand and she cupped it between both of hers, blowing warm air on it and rubbing it gently. "So cold. The heater's on." I laughed. "I'm not cold, liar." She glared at me, her ear tips pink from the heater's warmth. "Last time we took temperatures, yours was 3 whole degrees lower than mine." She got up and went to the kitchen, coming back with 2 mugs of ginger tea. They were the pottery mugs we'd made, our fingerprints glowing soft in the warm light. "Drink." She pressed the mug into my hand, then held her own close, her tail looping around my arm. "You'll warm right up." I took a sip. The spicy ginger mixed with sweet honey, warming me all the way from my throat to my stomach. Sumian leaned over and licked the rim of my mug, just like a kitten stealing sips of milk. "Sweet." Her eyes curved into crescents. "Ayan's mug tastes sweeter." I laughed and handed her the mug. "Then have more." She held the mug and sipped slowly, the tip of her tail swishing back and forth on the couch, stirring up little flecks of sunlight. Lately Sumian kept staring at the calendar. I leaned over and saw she'd drawn a little red heart over February 14th. "Valentine's Day?" I asked. She nodded, ear tips pink. "Humans say you give gifts on Valentine's Day. What do you want?" I pinched her ear gently. She tilted her head. "I want Ayan to spend the whole day with me." "Okay." I agreed. "From morning till night, all with you." Her eyes lit up, and her tail thumped happily against the couch. "Pinky." "Promised." On Valentine's Day, I got up early and made her favorite salmon breakfast. She was wearing the red sweater I'd given her, her hair tied back in a ponytail with a new hair tie, her tail swishing happily behind her. We went to the amusement park, rode the carousel, ate cotton candy. In the haunted house she got so scared she threw herself into my arms, her tail coiled tight around my waist. In the afternoon we went to a movie. She dozed on my shoulder, the tip of her tail brushing the back of my hand softly. When we got home that night, I handed her the gift I'd gotten ready, a collar with a little bell, shaped like a kitten. "Is it okay?" I hesitated a little. "Is it too much?" Her eyes lit up brighter than ever. She put it on right away. The bell rang softly once, like the first bird song of spring. "Pretty?" She spun in a circle, her hair tie and the bell on her collar jingling together. "Ayan gave it to me. It's the prettiest." I leaned down and kissed her collar. The bell rang softly again. Her tail coiled around my neck, tugging me down, and her lips brushed softly against mine. "Ayan," she murmured right by my ear. "I'm so happy." Days rolled on, slow and steady. Sumian's tail clung to me more and more, around my wrist when we walked, around my ankle when we ate, and coiled all the way around my waist when we slept, like a warm, cozy blanket. Her cat ears spoke for her. When I came home late from overtime, her ear tips drooped, and her tail went limp. When I bought her a new catnip toy, her ears perked straight up, and her tail swirled into a little spiral. When I praised her cooking, her ears gave a little twitch, like she was saying of course. She'd crouch beside me when I worked at the computer, her tail curled around my wrist, her face resting on the back of my hand as she dozed. She'd lie by the bathroom door when I showered, the tip of her tail slipping under the crack and brushing the top of my foot softly. She'd tuck me in with her tail when I fell asleep, then curl up into a little fluff ball on my chest. Lately Sumian kept saying I smelled nice. "Ayan smells like sunshine." She nuzzled my neck, like a blanket that's been hung out to dry. I laughed and stroked her ear. "That's just laundry detergent." "No it's not," she protested. "It's Ayan's smell." Later I found out she kept sneaking her hair ties, scarves, even her catnip toys into my closet. When I asked her about it, she tilted her head and said, "Then Ayan will smell like me." So now every one of my shirts carried her soft scent, mixed with a faint hint of catnip. Last winter Sumian got sick. She curled up under the covers, her tail limp, her ears burning hot. I panicked and took time off work to take care of her, feeding her medicine, dabbing her forehead, wiping her hands with warm cloths. Ayan, I feel awful. She clung to my hand, her voice hoarse. Feels like all my magic's drained away. I felt her ear, way hotter than usual. You'll feel better. I kissed her forehead. I'm right here. She nodded with her eyes closed, her tail curling softly around my wrist. I barely slept those 3 days. In the middle of the night, delirious with fever, she'd grab my sleeve and mumble, "Don't go, Ayan." When I gave her medicine, she'd frown and say bitter, but still swallow it obediently. When her fever broke, she'd hug me and cry, saying I never want to be sick again. I missed you so much. After she got better, she got even clingier. 3 kisses before leaving the house every morning. After Sumian recovered, her clinginess shot through the roof. The morning sun had barely crept over the curtains when I was woken up by a soft, fuzzy tickle on my eyelashes. I blinked open my eyes straight into a pair of wet amber eyes. She was kneeling on my chest, her tail hanging down and brushing my chin. The soft fuzz on her ear tips was messy from sleep, like a fluffy little cloud. "Good morning, Ayan." She smiled, a little tuft of hair sticking up at the top of her head. "No sleeping in today, okay?" I lifted a hand to rub her ear. She immediately half closed her eyes and purred, but her tail coiled relentlessly around my wrist, tugging it toward her cheek. 5 more minutes. I closed my eyes playfully. She leaned down suddenly, the tip of her nose brushing mine. Our breaths tangled and I caught the faint scent of her hair, the shampoo I'd bought last time. Ayan's heart is beating so slow. She tilted her head, her palm flat on my chest. "It was like this when you were sick too." I counted the beats to fall asleep. My throat felt tight. I reached up and pulled her closer by the waist. She went limp in my arms, like warm, soft cotton candy, but her tail curled secretly around my waist, tracing ticklish arcs under my pajamas. "No more sleeping." I kissed her forehead. "Let's go get dim sum today." "Okay." Her eyes lit up instantly, ears perked straight. "Shrimp dumplings, chicken feet, and Ayan has to feed me." By the window of the dim sum restaurant, Sumian held her teacup to warm her hands. She was wearing an off-white sweater that day, her tail hidden under her loose knit skirt. But I knew that fluffy ball was swishing happily under there right now because her toes were tapping softly against mine under the table. "Ayan, look." She poked the steamer basket with her chopstick tip. "The shrimp dumpling skin is like crystal." I picked one up, blew on it, and held it to her mouth. She took a tiny bite. The sweet freshness of shrimp mixed with the crisp bamboo shoot burst on her tongue, and her eyes curved into crescents. "Better than the ones I make." "Yours are good too." I smiled. "My coworkers loved the salmon on a jiri you made last time." Her ear tips flushed pink, and her tail brushed my calf softly under the table. Then I'll make something new for Ayan. Cod congee with pickled radish." A kid from the next table suddenly ran over, held up a balloon and grinned at Sumian. "Miss, your hair looks like cotton candy." Sumian froze, then looked down and touched her own hair. The kid's mom hurried over to apologize, but she just crouched down, pulled a candy out of her bag and said, "Want one? Strawberry flavor?" The kid took the candy and ran off. When she sat back down, her tail was limp. "Ayan, am I weird?" "Not weird at all." I held her hand. "You're the cutest cat girl in the whole world." She looked up at me, her pupils narrowing into thin slits from happiness. Her tail suddenly slipped out from under the skirt and coiled around my wrist under the tablecloth, like she was saying, "Don't take it back." In the afternoon we went to the flower and bird market. Sumian crouched in front of a succulent stall, her fingertip brushing a drop of water on a leaf gently. "This one looks like a little bun." She pointed at a jade dew succulent. "Ayan, can we get one?" "Okay." I paid and watched her cradle the succulent carefully in her arms. "Where should we put it?" "On the study windowsill." Her eyes sparkled. Ella gets sun in the morning and I can tell it stories at night." When we passed a pet stall, she stopped short. Inside the glass tank, a ragdoll cat was clinging to the edge, its big blue eyes wide and wet. It looks like me when I was little, she murmured. All soaked through from the rain, curled up in a cardboard box, staring at people passing by just like that. I crouched down beside her. The ragdoll pressed its paws against the glass, and Sumian pressed the tip of her tail gently to the glass too. Two fluffy little things, shaking hands through the pain. Should we bring it home? I asked. She shook her head quickly, her tail coiling into a tight little fluff ball. No. I'd get jealous. I laughed and pinched her ear. Jealous? She stared down and twisted her fingers. If Ayan pets it more than me, I'll hide all its toys with my tail. I laughed and pulled her to her feet. Then we'll just keep the succulent. Okay? She lit up instantly, her tail swirling into a little spiral. Okay. Succulents don't steal a yawn from me. On the way home, Sumian suddenly tugged at the hem of my coat. Ayan, there's a roasted sweet potato stand over there. I followed her gaze. An old man's three-wheeled cart steamed with warmth. She licked her lips, her ear tips pink. I saw on TV last time that humans eat roasted sweet potatoes in winter to stay warm.
I bought two. The hot skins had split open, revealing the honey-colored flesh inside.
She held one in both hands, the tip of her tail twitching softly behind her like she was working up the courage to take a bite. Blow on it first, I reminded her. She blew on it obediently and took a bite. The sweet, soft flesh melted on her tongue. Her eyes flew wide and her tail thumped happily against the back of my hand. Ayan, it's sweeter than the candied chestnuts. I laughed at her face and broke my own sweet potato in half to give her. Then have more. She held both halves like they were treasure. Her tail curled softly around my wrist, sharing warmth through the cold air. That night I was in the study revising a proposal. Sumian sat on the carpet holding the succulent. Her tail spread out behind her like a fuzzy blanket, and the little lopsided succulent sat on top of it like a plant growing out of a cloud. Ayan, do we need to water it? She held up a little spray bottle. The instructions say once a week. We just got it today. We can water it tomorrow. I ruffled her hair. Come sit here, you'll catch a cold. She immediately climbed onto my lap, still holding the succulent, and her tail wrapped around both our legs. The succulent's leaves brushed her chin. She leaned down and murmured to it, "Be good. Ayan's lap is warm. You'll warm up too." I smiled at how earnest she was and kept typing. She leaned over my shoulder to watch the screen, poking the cursor lightly with her fingertip. Ayan's work looks like weaving a web. Line after line after line. Yeah, like knitting scarves for clients, I said offhand. Her eyes lit up. Then I'll knit a scarf for Ayan too. Last year's was too short. This year I'll make it long enough to wrap around twice. Sounds good? I laced my fingers through hers. What color do you want to make it? Blue. Ayan's favorite. She tilted her head. With white stripes. Like the sky and clouds. That weekend we went to the seaside. Sumian was wearing the white windbreaker I'd bought her. Her long hair blowing in the sea wind, her tail drifting behind her like a half-translucent mist. Ayan, the ocean tastes like salt. She opened her mouth to catch the spray from the waves. A little salty, but free. We walked along the beach. She crouched down to collect seashells, holding up every pretty one she found to show me. This one looks like the moon. This one looks like a little ear. I helped tuck the shells into her pocket and watched her tail swirl happily. When a wave crashed in, she yelped and dove into my arms, her tail coiling so tight around my waist it almost hurt. Ayan's so cold, she huddled against me. Feels like when I snuck a sip of your iced cola last time. I laughed and tucked her hands into my coat pockets. No more cold drinks next time. We'll have hot cocoa. She leaned up and kissed my chin. Ayan's coat is warmer than a heater. We sat on the sand for a long time. Sumian leaned against my shoulder, her tail draped over my leg, drawing our names in the sand with a seashell. The sea wind blew grains of sand into her hair, but she didn't notice it all, focused on drawing the lopsided characters, Yan and Mian. Ayan, should we bury a time capsule here? She said suddenly. And dig it up in 10 years? Sure. I fished the tiny tin box off my keychain, the one I'd bought at Disney on our last trip. What should we put inside? She pulled our Polaroid out of her pocket. Half a candied chestnut shell, she'd insisted it was sentimental, and finally plucked one of her own white hairs and dropped it in. Catgirl hair doesn't break. She closed the lid. It'll still be white in 10 years. Ion's hair might have some white ones by then. I laughed and buried the tin in the sand, marking the spot with a seashell. She leaned over my back to watch, her tail tickling my neck. Ion better remember where it is. Otherwise I'll use my magic to dig 3 feet deep and find it. On winter nights we always curled up on the couch watching old movies. Sumian liked tucking herself into my arms, her tail coiled around my waist, holding a hot water bottle. Ion, that leading lady's dress looks like a flower. She pointed at the screen. I want one too. I'll buy you one next time we go shopping. I pinched her earlobe. Don't buy it for me. She shook her head. I want Ion to come pick it out with me. I'll try it on and show you. When the kissing scene came on, she suddenly looked up at me. Her amber eyes looked like 2 drops of melted honey in the warm lamplight, and the tip of her tail brushed softly across my lips. Ion, is that how humans kiss? She whispered. I leaned down and kissed her. Her tail immediately coiled around my neck, tugging me closer. The second our lips touched, she trembled softly, like a snowflake landing on a palm. Her ear tips were bright red when she pulled away. Sweeter than on TV. Sumian's birthday fell on a snowy day. I'd bought a little cake ahead of time and hung star-string lights around the living room. When she pushed the door open, snowflakes clung to her eyelashes, and she was holding a paper box. Ion present. She handed me the box. I made it myself. Inside was a blue and white striped scarf. The stitches were much neater than last year's, and a tiny cat paw was embroidered at the end. Do you like it? She twisted her fingers nervously. I ripped it out 3 times. The part 1 messed up last time. You don't notice, right? I love it. I put it on right away. Warmer than any scarf I've ever had. Her eyes curved into crescent moons, and her tail swished so fast it stirred up a little breeze. Then, where's Ion's present for me? I nodded toward the cake. And this. She leaned in. The cake was decorated with strawberries spelling Happy Birthday Sumian, and a little kitten made of frosting sat on top. Did Ion make it? She looked up, delighted. Learned from a video. I scratched the back of my neck. The frosting's a little melted. She suddenly threw her arms around me, her tail wrapping all the way around me. I could feel her tears soaking through my sweater, and a soft little purr rumbling in her throat. Ion, you're so good to me. She sniffled. I thought no one would ever know my birthday. I stroked her hair, thinking back to that little huddled ball of fluff in the cardboard box the day we first met. She'd had her own quiet loneliness, I realized. Like starlight dimmed by rain. I'll remember every year from now on. I kissed the top of her head. When we're 50, when we're 100, even when I can't walk and I'm in a wheelchair, I'll still buy you cake. She looked up and smiled, tears glistening on her cheeks. If Ion can't walk, I'll pull the wheelchair with my tail. And pick you wildflowers from the side of the road. Spring came early that year. Sumian's succulent grew new leaves. Our pottery mugs held warm milk every day. The carved characters on the bottom softened by time. She still cooked warm congee. When I worked overtime, warmed my hands with her tail when I had a cold, and knitted scarves while I watched soccer games. The difference was her possessiveness had softened into quiet, gentle care. Like when I went on business trips, she'd stuff my suitcase full of her hair ties, saying then, Ion won't forget me. Or when I came home late, she'd wait by the peephole, then throw herself at me the second she heard footsteps. Her tail coiled tight around my wrist and refusing to let go. A few days ago I was going through our photo album and found the picture from the day we met. That soaking wet little white ball in the storm, and my hand holding the umbrella over her. Now Sumian would curl up in my arms on rainy days and watch the rain. Her tail draped over my leg, and say the sound of rain falling sounds like Ion's heartbeat. Sometimes I wonder, did I save her, or did she save me? She's the one who made me realize the most precious things in life aren't the projects I work on till 2 a.m., or success in other people's eyes. It's the light on when you get home. It's the warm congee on the table. It's that fluffy little thing that throws herself into your arms and says, Ayan, I missed you so much. Last night before bed, Sumyeon said suddenly, Ayan, I want to meet your mom. I froze. Her ear tips went pink, and her tail curled around my fingers. Last time you said your mom likes cats. I can turn into a little kitten and play with her, or stay in my regular form. Do you think she'll be scared? No way. I laughed and held her tighter. My mom's definitely gonna say, what a pretty girl. Way better taste than my son. Her eyes lit up, her tail swishing like a little fan. Then I'll pick out presents tomorrow. Flowers she likes and the pastries she loves. Oh, and I'll bring my catnip toy too. If she likes cats, I can. I kissed her quiet. Her tail immediately coiled around my waist, swirling into a soft, warm mist in the dark. Moonlight streamed in through the window, catching the little cat paw charm at her throat and our laced fingers. On the day we went to see my mom, Sumyeon had been nervous since dawn. She knelt in front of the wardrobe picking out an outfit for 20 minutes. Finally settling on a pale pink knit dress, the one I'd told her last year looked like a spring flower. She tied her hair back in a low ponytail with the pearl hair tie my mom had sent, and tucked her tail under the skirt, but it still twitched uncontrollably, lifting the hem in tiny rippling waves. Ayan, do I look weird like this? She spun in front of the mirror, her ear tips flushed pink. Do you think your mom will think I don't look human enough? My mom's seen pictures of you. I smiled and brushed her bangs straight for her. She called yesterday and said, Mian has such pretty eyes. Reminds me of our old orange tabby when he was young. Her eyes lit up. Really? Really? I laced my fingers through hers, and she told me to bring the salmon cookies you made. My mom lived in an alley in the old part of town. The osmanthus tree by her courtyard gate was taller than I was. When we arrived, she was crouching on the steps playing with a stray cat, flour dusted on her blue cloth apron. Zhao Yan. Mom looked up and her eyes curved into crescent moons the second they landed on Sumyeon. This must be Mian, right? Come in, come in. I made lotus root starch balls. Sumyeon's tail twitched softly under her skirt. When she let go of my hand, she hooked her pinky around mine secretly for a second. She knelt down to pet the stray cat, and it immediately rolled onto its back and rubbed against her palm. The tip of the cat's tail tapped against the tip of Sumyeon's tail, like two little fluff balls whispering secrets. Hello, Auntie. She looked up and smiled. These are cookies I brought you, made with fresh salmon. Ayan said you like sweet things, so I added a little honey. Mom took the gift box, her eyes sparkling like stars. Mian's such a sweetheart, way more thoughtful than my clumsy son. I pretended to protest, but Sumyeon winked at me secretly, the tip of her tail brushing my calf. Our little secret victory signal. At lunch, Mom brought out the beef and radish stew she'd been simmering for 3 hours. Sumyeon held her bowl and ate slowly, her tail slipping out from under her skirt to rest on my leg, pressing down softly like she was saying delicious. What do you like to do in your free time, Mian? Mom scooped a piece of beef onto her plate. I like cooking for Ayan. Her eyes curved into crescent moons. I like going to the supermarket with him. I like watching him when he's working. And, I like sneaking sniffs of his clothes. Mom laughed and my ears burned. Mom, don't listen to her. What's wrong with that? Mom dabbed at her eyes. When I was young, I loved the smell of your dad's army uniform too. Mian, that's what you call caring about the person you live with. Auntie loves that. Sumyeon's tail shot straight up like a little flagpole, her ear tips bright scarlet. She knocked over the soup spoon in her fluster. I hurried to pick it up, but I felt her tail curl softly around my hand under the table, squeezing gently. In the afternoon, Mom dug out my old childhood photo album. Sumyeon lay on the couch completely absorbed, pointing at a photo of me in toddler pants with the seat cut out. Ayan looked like a little scruffy puppy when he was little. Don't you say that about my boy? Mom pretended to scold, but she was smiling as she stroked Sumyeon's hair. Mian's hair is so soft, softer than the rag doll I used to keep. Sumyeon's ears perked straight up instantly, and her tail swirled into a little spiral. She hesitated for a second, and a faint silver glow rose at her fingertips, the telltale sign of a Catgirl letting her magic show. Auntie, she said softly, can I show you my real form? Mom blinked in surprise, then laughed until tears came to her eyes. Of course. Let Auntie see what our Mian really looks like. Silver light flashed, and a tiny pure white kitten appeared on the couch. Her big round eyes were still amber, her tail fluffy as a cloud. She tilted her head and batted at the back of my hand with one paw. Mom picked her up gently, and the kitten immediately curled into a little fluff ball, purring softly in her throat. Such a good girl. Mom rubbed her chin with her thumb, just as cuddly as our old orange tabby. The kitten suddenly jumped down, took the hem of my pants in her teeth, and tugged me toward the bedroom. I followed her. She hopped up onto the windowsill and shifted back into human form, her tail coiling around my wrist and tugging me closer. Ayan? Did she like me? She looked up at me, her eyes wet and glistening. When I was a cat and she pet my ears, it felt like Mom. I kissed her forehead. She already thinks of you as her daughter. Her tail immediately coiled around my waist, and she buried her face in the crook of my neck. Then, can I call her Mom? Of course you can. I smiled and stroked her ear. She's been waiting to hear that for a long time. On the ride home, Su Mian dozed on my shoulder. Her tail slipped out from under her coat and draped over our laced hands, the tip still scented with osmanthus from Mom's courtyard. My phone lit up with a message from Mom. Mian's a good girl. Takes better care of people than you do. Bring her again next time. I'll teach her to make sweet taro soup. I looked down at Su Mian. Her eyelashes fluttered softly, and a small smile still played on her lips. I suddenly thought of the day we first met, that little thing huddling in the cardboard box, trying to curl herself into an even smaller ball. Turns out some meetings are a lamp in the storm, warmth in the cold, fate tucking two lonely hearts gently into the same spring. Years later we dug up the time capsule at the beach. The Polaroid inside the tin had yellowed a little. The candied chestnut shell was still intact. Su Mian's white hair glowed pearlescent in the sunlight. She crouched on the sand and drew a circle in the sand with a seashell, looping the characters Yan and Mian inside. Ayan, she said suddenly. Let's get married. I froze. Her tail coiled around my wrist and tugged me down to sit on the sand beside her. We don't need a big fuss. She tilted her head. Just us and Mom and the succulent, and that stray cat that always comes to the windowsill. I'll wear the cherry blossom dress you got me. You'll wear the blue scarf I knit. And we'll say I do right here by the sea. She pulled a ring out of her pocket, a silver band shaped by her magic, with our names carved inside the band. I snuck a measurement of your finger when we went to the jewelry shop last time. Her ear tips flushed pink. Ayan, will you spend forever with me? Waves washed up over our ankles, soaking the hems of our pants. I took the ring and slid it onto her finger. Her finger was warm, and the band fit like it had been made just for her. I do. I kissed her fingertip. From that cardboard box in the storm, to when we're old and gray and in wheelchairs, I do. She laughed and threw herself into my arms, her tail swirling into a white mist in the wind. Seagulls glided over the waves in the distance. The sky was as blue as our pottery mugs, as blue as the scarf she'd knit, as blue as every warm, soft hope for the future. Now there's a wedding photo in our living room. In it, Su Mian wears a floral dress, and I wear the blue scarf. That same stretch of ocean where we buried our time capsule in the background. Her tail slips out from under her skirt and curls secretly around my waist, like it's saying this time I'll never let go. Mom comes over every week, bringing fresh batches of sweet taro soup. Su Mian turns into a kitten and curls up on her lap, listening to stories about all my silly childhood mishaps. Sometimes she shifts back into human form all of a sudden and argues, cheeks flushed. Ayan's very well behaved now. Our succulent grew lush and full. Our pottery mugs hold warm milk every day. The carved characters on the bottom softened and gentler with time. Su Mian's tail still loves to curl around me, around my wrist when we cook, around my ankle when we read, coiled around my waist when we sleep, like a forever, warm breathing scarf. Last winter we added a cradle to the study. When Sumian holds our little bundle and rocks her to sleep, soft fuzz peeks out from the tips of the baby's ears, and the tip of her tiny tail still has its baby fuzz. She looks up and smiles at me, her eyes like 2 drops of melted honey. Ayaan, doesn't our little kitten look like you and me when we were little? I lean down and kiss her forehead. Outside the window, snow falls slow and soft. In the warm glow of the floor lamp, Sumian's silver hair glows soft, and the baby's tiny tail brushes gently across the back of her hand. Turns out the happiest ending is never the end of the story. It's taking every ordinary day with the person you love, and turning it into something precious, a poem that never has to end. This story describes how the male protagonist rescued the lonely cat girl Sumian on a rainy night. They stayed together day after day, took care of each other in ordinary life, and gradually developed sincere love. True affection does not always come from grand encounters. Instead, it lies in trivial daily care, accepting each other's original looks and personalities. Accompanying and looking after one another builds deep emotional bonds. Happiness does not require magnificent ceremonies. Cherish the people beside you and value every moment together. Even ordinary days can be warm and beautiful.